Our village is being demolished. My house was bulldozed overnight. The village chief threw down 2,000 yuan, said it was for buying coffins for my whole family. I didn't get a single cent in compensation, but the whole village said I deserve to be poor. Said it's 'cause my family has no connections. I got furious and secretly gathered evidence to report him. The village chief threatened to kill my entire family. The demolition work came to a complete halt. The whole village surrounded my house and threw bricks at it, said I cut off their path to getting rich. Half a year later, I received 10 million yuan in compensation. The village chief knelt on the ground and called me daddy. Villagers crowded my door begging me for handouts. My name is Song Tieju. I tie rebar at a construction site in the provincial capital. I've been doing this for 10 years. It was 2 a.m. that day. I just finished work and laid down. The phone rang. It was old son next door calling. His voice was shaking. Tieju, get back here right now. Your house is gone. I was half asleep at the time. Thought he was drunk and talking nonsense. What do you mean gone? How can a house just disappear? It's just gone, bulldozed. The bulldozer came in the middle of the night. There's not a single whole brick left of your courtyard wall. I woke up instantly. I immediately bought a ticket for the earliest bus overnight. I didn't close my eyes for the entire 6-hour ride. My hands kept shaking the whole time. I don't know if it was from the cold or something else. It was 9 a.m. I stood at the village entrance. My house had 3 main rooms and a courtyard. It was built back when my grandpa was alive. 3 generations of my family lived there. Now all that's left is a pile of broken bricks. You can't even see a single intact corner of the wall. The bulldozer's tread marks were still on the dirt ground. Deep and wide, they stretched from the courtyard all the way to the back wall. My mom was squatting on top of the brick pile, holding a half-broken enamel bowl in her hand. She brought it from her parents' home when she got married. White base with blue flowers. She's used it for 30 years. The bottom of the bowl is completely worn smooth. When she saw me, her lips moved twice but no sound came out. Her eyes were as swollen as walnuts. She'd obviously been crying all night. My dad was standing nearby. His lips were purple. He was standing there like a statue. That jacket he's worn for so many years, the army green one, was completely covered in dust. There were even a few wood splinters hanging from his sleeve. I called out, Dad. He opened his mouth. After a long while, he spat out 4 words. Ask Himan Kang. I didn't say a word and headed straight to the village committee for Himan Kang. He's the chief of New Jiawan village. He's held the post for over 20 years, short, fat, with a round head. He walks like he's got wind under his feet. His voice is louder than anyone else's. No one in the village dares to talk back to him. When I walked into the village committee office, he was sitting with his legs crossed drinking tea. There was a set of purple clay teapots on the table, and half a pack of soft Chunghwa cigarettes. When he saw me come in, he didn't even lift his eyelids. You're here, take a seat. I'm not sitting. Who bulldozed my house? He slowly put down his teacup, scraped the tea foam twice with the lid. Tieju, your house was an illegal building. It never got approval when it was built 8 years ago. Go check if you don't believe me. By the rules, we shouldn't give you a single cent. That 2,000 yuan moving fee is out of my own pocket. What more do you want? My family has a homestead certificate. That seal on the certificate is a fake one your dad carved himself, right? Take it out and show everyone. There were 3 or 4 people sitting nearby. Some were from the village committee. Some were just there to watch the fun. All of them started laughing. I still remember that laughter even now. It wasn't loud laughter. It was the kind of laugh you make when enjoying someone's misfortune. I clenched my fists. My nails dug into my palms. Himan Kang, you bulldozed my house. Without even notifying us first. When my mom woke up startled in the middle of the night. She didn't even have time to get dressed properly. She ran out barefoot. Himan Kang picked up his teacup and took a sip. Tieju, if you're not happy, go sue me. Court, petition office, discipline inspection commission, wherever you want. But let me warn you. I still haven't settled the score with your dad for what he did back then. Be smart, take the 2,000 yuan and leave. You work moving bricks out of town, you can survive. If you don't play nice. Look at what's left of your house right now. I didn't say anything. I turned around and left. I went back to the ruins and rummaged around for the homestead certificate. My mom said through tears, all the documents are in the second drawer of the cabinet in the main room. When the bulldozer arrived, we simply had no time to move our belongings. He yelled at me to grab a few clothes. The bulldozer driver glanced at him and said, go talk to village chief he. Then it rumbled straight toward me. I lay on the broken bricks and dug with my bare hands. I dug for more than 2 hours. Finally, I felt under the broken bricks and pulled out a tin biscuit box. I opened it and saw everything inside was soaked and ruined. Probably the water pipe was smashed and cracked, so water seeped inside. The homestead certificate only had a faint red stamp left. All the writing was smudged beyond recognition. The ID card copy turned into a mushy pulp. I took these ruined documents to He-Man Kang again. He didn't even glance at them. I told you, illegal construction is illegal construction. Who are you trying to fool with this soggy mess? He waved his hand impatiently. Go, 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 don't get in the way here. I have a meeting this afternoon. When I walked out of the village committee, I glanced back over my shoulder. He was holding a teacup behind the window and said something to the person next to him. Those people laughed again. That night, my mom and dad were staying at Old Son's house. Old Son has been our neighbor for decades. He cleared out a woodshed for us. I couldn't fall asleep. I leaned against the outside of the yard wall smoking. I heard several villagers chatting in the next room. Song Laifu deserves this. He went against the village chief back then. See what he gets now. Exactly. He-Man Kang even gave him 2,000 yuan. That's more than enough. If it were me, I wouldn't give him a single cent. A woman said, I heard he doesn't even have a wife. Several people burst out laughing. My hand holding the cigarette was shaking. My nails dug into my palm. Inside the house, my mom was crying softly. She was holding her voice down really low, scared of annoying the hosts, but I could hear every sound clearly. I squatted outside the yard wall, took out that 2,000 yuan, folded each bill neatly one by one, 20 bills stacked into a pile, and stuffed it deep into my pocket. I stubbed out my cigarette and said one sentence. My voice was very soft, so quiet that almost only I could hear it. He-Man Kang, you win. Early the next morning, I went to the town government. The demolition office was on the second floor corridor. A row of plastic chairs was set up there, all filled with people. Most were from nearby villages, also here to ask about demolition issues. I waited in line for 4 hours before my number was finally called. A young clerk was sitting behind the window with a stack of documents in front of him. He flipped through the papers without even lifting his head. You're from New Jiawan village, right? The demolition compensation list for your village doesn't have your family's name on it. Why the hell not? The compensation list was submitted by the village. Go talk to your village committee. The village chief says my house is illegal construction, so he won't give me compensation. The clerk froze for a second. He looked down at the documents in his hand, opened his mouth, then closed it again. I saw his expression clearly. He knew something, but he wouldn't say it. Comrade, just tell me. Is my house actually illegal construction or not? You need to check with the Land Resources Department for that. I'm only in charge of implementing the demolition plan. He didn't say a single useful thing. I went to the county petition office and waited in line all day, from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Before I finally got to the window, a middle-aged woman sat across from me, with permed curly hair, wearing reading glasses. She asked me to fill out a form. In the claims section, I wrote 4 characters. House forcibly demolished. She looked up at me. Are you done filling it out? Good, if you're done, go back and wait for notification. I asked how long I'd have to wait. She said it's hard to say. Depends on the situation. Leave your phone number. I waited for 2 weeks, checking my phone every day. There was no news at all. I went there again. She flipped through the records and said, the issue you reported has already been transferred to the relevant department for handling. Go back and keep waiting. I asked which department it was transferred to. He said they couldn't disclose that information to me. I stood right outside the petition bureau entrance. The sun was beating down so hard my forehead was throbbing. I then realized I'd forgotten to bring water with me when I left home. My throat was as dry as a bone, but I felt even more parched inside. Right around that time, something happened to my dad. The day they demolished our house. He stood out in the rain for half the night. He's had chronic bronchitis for ages. He hadn't had a flare-up in years. This time it turned straight into pneumonia. His fever hit over 39 degrees Celsius. He was wheezing so bad he could barely breathe. My mom couldn't hold him back by herself, so she called 120 to get him admitted to hospital. Total cost was 820 yuan. The blood work and CT scan alone cost over 1,000 yuan. My mom was so worried she was totally disoriented. She secretly took out that savings passbook. I knew exactly what that money was for. She'd been saving it for 6 years. Said it was for my wedding later on. She stuffed the passbook under her pillow. I spotted that passbook when I was in the hospital hallway. The remaining balance was 320 yuan. I squatted in the stairwell, lit a cigarette, my hands shaking. It wasn't from the cold. Once we got discharged from the hospital, I went to Kang to demand an explanation. He was treating people to dinner in a private room at a town restaurant. The door wasn't shut properly. I spotted 2 bottles on the table, of mutai, plus a fat guy in a suit. I only found out later that the fat guy was the project manager from the development company. I pushed the door open and walked in. Kang was lifting a piece of braised pork to his mouth. He saw me and paused with his chopsticks mid-air. Then he acted like nothing was wrong and moved the pork into his mouth and chewed twice. He said to the fat guy, "Look, Mr. Wang, this is that troublemaker I mentioned to you before. His whole family are a bunch of poor losers. They don't know what's good for them." He turned his head to me. "What are you doing here? Can't you see I'm in a meeting?" I said, "My dad's in the hospital. The bill's 300 yuan. You have to pay this amount. You demolished our house in the middle of the night." He stood out in the rain all night. That's why he got pneumonia. Kang pointed his chopsticks at me, Song Teju. "Get one thing straight. Demolishing your illegal construction was a legal procedure. Your dad's poor health is his own problem. What does that have to do with me?" He turned back to the fat guy and smiled. "Don't worry, Mr. Wang. I'll handle this small issue." He Xiaolong walked out from inside the private room. He's Kang's only son, 30 years old. A whole head taller than his dad. His hair was dyed bright yellow. He wore a gold chain around his neck. He owns a building material store in the county town. Relying entirely on his dad's connections, he's monopolized the building materials supply for the demolition site. He grabbed my arm and dragged me out of the restaurant. At the door, he patted my face. It wasn't a slap, just a pat. He patted twice with the palm of his hand. That kind of pat was way more insulting than a slap. "Brother Teju, I suggest you think this through clearly. My dad's word is law in this village. Even if you complain to the highest authority, it's useless. Take this 2,000 yuan and get lost right now. Don't ever come back here." He leaned close to my ear. His voice wasn't loud, but every word was crystal clear. "You know whose house your mom's staying at, right? Don't make them too scared to take her in." I didn't say a single word. I went back to Old Man Sun's house. I found Old Man Sun sitting in the main room smoking silently. He looked off. "Teju, it's not that I don't want to help you, kid." He rubbed his hands together. He didn't dare look at me. Kang sent someone over to tell us, "Whoever takes you in gets their compensation cut in half." Look, I have old people and kids to support at home. I didn't say anything at all. Half an hour later, I borrowed a tricycle. I loaded my dad, who still hadn't fully recovered, and my mom onto it and drove them to the ruins of our house. I spent 15 yuan on a roll of plastic sheeting, found 4 bamboo poles, built a shed on top of the pile of broken bricks. We moved in that very night. Wind blew in from under the plastic sheeting. It was so cold my bones ached. My mom wrapped my dad in 2 layers of old quilts she'd picked up. She huddled in the corner herself. Didn't make a single sound. I thought this was the lowest point we could get. Turns out I was wrong. On the evening of the 3rd day, I went to the alley to pour out water. Old Mrs. Wang from next door was cursing loudly at the base of the wall. That son of a bitch, Kang. They offered 250,000 yuan compensation for my 3 rooms. Deducted 150,000 yuan. Said it was some kind of public sharing fee. I only got 100,000 yuan in the end. My old man went to ask about it. That bastard Xiaolong pushed him over. His back still can't straighten up even now. She finished cursing, then spotted me. Was stunned for a second, turned around and left right away. But I remembered all those numbers. 150,000 yuan was deducted. It wasn't just my family. Kang was scamming everyone. That night, I squatted in the shed, using the faint light from my phone screen. I wrote a few words on the back of a Hong Taishan cigarette pack. The Wang family's 3 houses got 250,000 yuan compensation. 150,000 was deducted. This was the first piece of evidence I collected. I didn't know if it would be useful, but I knew one thing for sure. Xiang had a guilty conscience. Otherwise, he wouldn't have threatened everyone to keep their mouths shut. People with a guilty conscience always have a weak spot. This whole evidence collecting thing was 100 times harder than I thought it would be. During the day, I did odd jobs moving cement at the town construction site. Carrying sand got me 120 yuan a day, no meals included. I got home at night, left right as soon as it got dark. knocked on doors from house to house. First house was Old Man Lee's. The door opened a crack. When he saw it was me, slammed the metal gate shut with a bang. "Get out of here! Don't get me in trouble!" Second house was Sister Zhao's. The door didn't open. I heard a voice from the window. "He Man Kang's guys are watching every day. What do you want from me?" Third house was Lame Jiang's. A hand stuck out through the door crack, waved at me. "Go away, just go. Don't let anyone see you here." I did this every day for a whole week. Visited 7 or 8 households. None of them were willing to say a single extra word. I squatted in the alley smoking a cigarette. Thought about it for ages. Going to their houses isn't working. I need to try somewhere else. There's a vegetable patch at the east end of the village on the ridge. Every day around 3 or 4 p.m., the old folks go there to work, weeding the fields, watering and tilling the soil. No walls have ears out in the fields. I went there too. Said I was there to help till the land as an excuse. Made small talk while I tilled. "Uncle, how much compensation did you get for the demolition?" At first, he didn't say a word. I just kept tilling the land, no rush. After tilling for half an hour, Old Man Lee spoke first and sighed. "Don't even get me started. Once people start talking, you can't stop them from saying more." He said his 4 houses plus an open shed got 350,000 yen in compensation, but He Man King deducted all kinds of fees. Stuff like public area fees, greening fees, garbage disposal fees. He got less than 160,000 yuan in the end. He asked for the fee breakdown. He Man King said, "You want a breakdown? The breakdown's right here." Pointed at his own head. Sister Zhao told me by the river. When she was washing clothes, her yard had an old well. Per the rules, that should get separate compensation. He Man King just crossed it out entirely. Said things underground don't count as above-ground structures. She said He Dajin was standing right next to them at the time. She didn't dare ask any more questions. The most ridiculous case was Lame Jiang's. His house is right next to the main road. Best location in the whole village. Based on the area and location, his family should have gotten the most money. But He Man Kang labeled his house a dangerous building. Said his house had safety hazards. Cut the compensation in half straight away. Lame Jiang has bad legs. Went to the village committee on crutches to argue. He Dajin stopped him at the door, shoved him to the ground. One of his crutches broke. Lame Jiang lay on the ground looking at He Dajun. Said, "You can't do this." He Dajin squatted down and patted his face. That same pat he always does and said, "Your legs are already messed up as it is. If you fall again, you'll end up in a wheelchair. Think it through before you come back." I recorded all of these conversations. I had my phone's recorder on in my pocket. Microphone facing outwards. My phone only had 2 GB of storage. I'd export each recording right after I finished it. Saved it to a USB drive. That USB drive was something I got at the construction site. A coworker threw it away, didn't want it anymore. It's slow to read and write data, but it works. After 3 weeks, adding up the numbers from 6 households, I gasped in shock. Just these 6 families alone. He Man Kang stole over 2 million yuan from them. There's over 130 households in the whole village. I didn't even dare calculate the total. But I had no idea. He Man Kang was already watching me. His nephew He Dajun had been staking out the village entrance shop for days. Saw that I went to the fields every evening. He Man Kang called a meeting that same night. Got several people to come to his house for it. Early the next morning, it wasn't fully bright yet. My mom was cooking porridge with an alcohol stove in the shed. Footsteps came from outside. A whole lot of footsteps. He Man Kang showed up in front of the shed with 5 or 6 guys. He kicked down the supporting bamboo pole with 1 foot. The whole plastic sheet collapsed. It hit the alcohol stove and knocked the pot over. Porridge spilled all over the ground. The alcohol stove almost set the plastic sheet on fire. My mom crawled out from under the collapsed plastic sheet. Her knee hit a broken brick. A chunk of skin got scraped off. Blood started seeping out. Song Tieju and He Man Kang stood there with their hands on their hips. "You built an unauthorized structure on my turf. Do you even know that—" I said, "This is our own family's residential land." He laughed really loud. "Residential land. Even houses on residential land are unauthorized now. Your shed is the most unauthorized of them all. Tear it down yourself in 3 days. Or I'll do it for you." My mom plopped down on her knees right in front of He Man Kang. Her knee was just scraped open. It was still bleeding. She just knelt there right on the broken bricks. "Brother Man Kang, please have a heart. Cut us some slack, will you? We've got nowhere else to go." He Man King looked down at her. He spoke after a long while, "Sister-in-law Gilan. Kneeling to me won't do any good. Tell your son to stop causing trouble. I can still save some face for you folks. If he insists on courting death, don't blame me for not caring about old times. When he turned around to leave, the sole of his shoe stepped on my mom's fingers. I don't know if he did it on purpose or didn't see them, but my mom pulled her hand back in pain. All 4 of her fingers were badly bruised. I stared at my mom's hand. I didn't say a single word. I listened to the recording again that night. Then I made a decision. I'd send the stuff to a higher authority. Where do I send the letter? How do I even write the letter? I only graduated from junior high. I can't even put together a proper formal document. I scrolled through my phone all night. Finally, I found a legal aid hotline in the comments section of a law popularization short video and called it. The person who answered was a young girl. She had a very young voice. I told her the whole story from the start. She was silent for a few seconds. For your case, I suggest you keep all evidence safe first. Then write a formal written document. Send it to the city-level discipline inspection and supervision department. She taught me how to write the letter, what to put at the beginning, how to structure the main body, how to label the attachments. I used a pencil stub to take notes on 2 full pages. Before hanging up, she said, "You can call this number again if there's any update." Right around those days, my dad told me something he'd hidden for 20 years. Back then, the village sold a piece of East Side collective land to an out-of-town businessman. That money went into the village's account, but the amount didn't add up. My dad was the accountant for the village committee back then. He found a big chunk of it was missing. He took the account book to the town to report the issue. The person in charge of this area at the town was surnamed Chien. He was He Mankang's cousin. The complaint didn't go through. My dad got kicked out of the village committee. Ever since then, the whole village treated him like he was invisible. No one talked to him. No one invited him to dinners. No one even came to pay New Year visits during Spring Festival. It's been 20 years. Son, your dad is useless. I've been fighting this my whole life, and I got nothing out of it. His eyes were red when he said this. His hands were clenched tight under the quilt. I looked at him, Dad. You didn't succeed 20 years ago because you were fighting alone. Things are different now. He asked me how things were different. I didn't answer because I didn't know either. I just didn't want him to think that all the suffering he went through his whole life was for nothing. The complaint letter was sent out. One to the City Commission for Discipline Inspection. One to the Provincial Petition Bureau. I made 2 copies of the recording on the USB drive. I put 1 copy in the envelope and sent it. I hid the other copy in a place only I know about. Deep inside a crack in the wall at the southeast corner of the ruins. You have to reach all the way in to touch it. Wednesday afternoon. People from the town came. A black Santana. It had a local license plate. They squatted outside the wall for a full 4 hours. Mosquitoes bit their legs full of bumps. When they came out, it was almost dark. He Mankang walked them to the door, shaking hands with a big smile on his face. He even handed them a cigarette. The 2 guys took the cigarettes, tucked them behind their ears, got in the car, and left. My heart skipped a beat. Sure enough, the next morning, the village loudspeaker crackled on. He Mankang's raspy duck-like voice came through the speaker. Attention, all fellow villagers. Some selfish people don't care about the big picture, running around filing complaints and spreading rumors, which has severely disrupted the demolition process. The developer has decided to suspend construction. When work will resume depends on when that person stops causing trouble. When you all get your compensation payments also depends on when that person stops making a fuss. He didn't name any names, but everyone in the village knew who he was talking about. Right after the announcement ended, in less than an hour, I could already feel the difference. People hanging outside the village store saw me and all of them looked away, pretending not to notice. In the afternoon, I went to fetch water. 2 women washing veggies by the well saw me coming, grabbed their basins and left right away. They even glared back at me before leaving. That night, thud, a brick smashed through the plastic tarp on our shed roof and landed less than a foot from my mom's head. 2 more bricks came right after. I rushed outside. It was pitch black out. I couldn't see a thing. All I heard was the sound of people running away. I woke up early the next morning. There was a bucket of something by the shed door. It was liquid manure, stinking enough to make you puke. Someone also used red paint to write a few words on the brick next to it. Black sheep. Get out of New Jiawan. My mom went out to collect clothes hanging outside the shed. There were only 2 pieces draped over a bamboo pole. The second she stepped out, a group of women surrounded her. 4 or 5 of them were yelling louder and louder. That shit stirrer of a son of yours is the reason we can't get our demolition money. My family needs that money for my kids' tuition. Your family is cutting off our only way out. How dare this bitch show her face? Tell your son to get lost right now. Don't drag the whole village down with you. One of them even shoved my mom. My mom stumbled 2 steps back. The clothes in her hand fell into the mud. Someone threw a clod of mud at my back. It hit my shoulder with a smack. I didn't turn around. I went to look for the people who'd talked to me back in the fields before. All of them turned on me. Old Man Lee said through the crack in the door. I never said anything. Don't pin this on me, Sister Zhao yelled from her yard. Did you record me? That's against the law. Do you even know that? Lame Jiang was the most straightforward. He locked his door, stuck his head out the window. If you come again, I'll call 110. What upset me most was old Mrs. Wang, the same woman who used to sit by the wall, swearing at He-Man Kang louder than anyone else. She was standing right in the middle of the alley, jabbing her finger in my face. You piece of trash. You jinx! My husband's back just got better enough to move, and now you're causing trouble again. Do you want our whole family dead to be satisfied? She turned to leave after cursing me out. She walked 2 steps, then came back, and added one more thing. Your dad was a troublemaker back in the day, and you're just the same. Like father, like son, your whole family is trash. I stood there in the alley, surrounded by tightly shut doors on all sides. A kid about 4 or 5 years old threw a pebble at me through a door crack. The pebble hit my calf. His mom yanked him back inside. She whispered, "Don't touch that person. Bad luck." Then the door shut. My dad came home from the hospital. It wasn't because he was better. We couldn't afford the medical bills anymore. He checked himself out against doctor's advice. He saw the manure and bricks outside the shed, and the big red painted words. He didn't say a word. He quietly went to the ruins to find a broken wooden plank and put it in front of the shed door. Half a rusty nail was still stuck in that plank. It was the door frame of our old house. That night, I heard him tossing and turning in the shed, coughing and wheezing on and off. When his cough was at its worst, the whole shed was shaking. I lay there watching the plastic tarp rattle in the wind. The moon shone through the hole in the tarp. It was so bright it made my heart go cold. That very night, when I went out to dump the slop, I walked to the alley entrance. A dark figure suddenly stepped out of the shadows. I instinctively stepped back. The guy said nothing at all. He stuffed a small plastic bag into my hand, turned around, and left right away. He walked really fast. He was very thin. I couldn't see his face clearly. When I got back to the shed, I opened the plastic bag by the light of my phone. There was a business card and a piece of note. The card was printed with land requisition and demolition. Joyafan General Affairs Section, Command Center. There was only one line on the note, written in tiny ballpoint pen characters. Check the land requisition approval for plot 0783, New Jiaowen Village. The original copy is different from the public version. I didn't recognize the handwriting. I read the card and the note over and over again. Then I folded them and put them together with the 2,000 yuan, shoved them deep inside my pocket. I had no idea if this was a trap or something else. But on this night, when everyone shut their doors on me, someone reached out a hand from the dark. Should I take it? I had no other choice. I went to the county town the next day. The Bureau of Land and Resources is east of the county government compound. It's a dusty old 6-story building. Several tiles on the outer wall had fallen off. I wandered around the first-floor lobby for 20 minutes, totally lost. There were windows everywhere, people lining up everywhere. But what service each window handled, I couldn't understand any of it. Finally, I saw one in the corner. A small window marked public inquiry. Only 2 people were waiting in line ahead. It was my turn. I said I wanted to check the land requisition approval for a plot. A middle-aged man with glasses sat behind the window. He was peeling an orange. What's your relation to this plot? I'm a villager from that village. He asked me to fill out a form. For the plot number, I copied 0783 exactly from the note. I filled it out and handed it in. He glanced at it and said, "Go back and wait. It takes 3 to 5 working days." I waited 3 days and got no news. So I went there again. This time I made up a different excuse. I said I wanted to check the registration information of my family's homestead. He told me to operate on the self-service inquiry machine next to him by myself. I poked at the touchscreen for ages. I finally got into the system with great effort. The screen was full of crowded words and numbers. Stuff like coordinates, land use nature, planning red line, construction land permit number. I read every single word carefully. Most of them made no sense to me, but I understood one line. Requisition area, 87 mu. I stood there stunned for a long time. I know the demolition scope of New Joan village too well. I lived in that village for 18 years. From the old locust tree at the west end to the river embankment at the east end. From Sister Zhao's vegetable plot in the south to the farm road at the foot of the back hill in the north. I've walked the whole demolition area countless times. I've worked in construction on sites for 10 years. I have a more accurate sense of area than ordinary people. That area is at least 130 mu. Where did the extra 40 plus mu go? I took out my phone and took a picture of the screen. My hands were shaking. I took 3 shots before I got a clear one. Then I thought of one thing. My house is at the east end of the village. According to the map, that area is right outside the 87 mu red line. That is to say, my family's house is simply not within the legal land requisition scope. It was added in secretly, when He-Man Kang demolished my house. It's not a matter of how much compensation we get. It's completely illegal forced demolition. I stood in the lobby of the Land Bureau. My back was totally soaked with sweat. After I left the Land Bureau, I found a milk tea shop in the county town. I bought a 2.5 yuan cup of lemonade. I sat there the whole afternoon. Only one sentence kept running through my head. This is no longer about compensation money. This is a huge mess. 100 times bigger than I imagined. I made my 3rd call to the legal aid hotline. The same young girl answered the phone. I told her the numbers I found. There's a difference of over 40 mu between 87 mu and 130 mu. She was silent for a very long time, so long that I thought the call was disconnected. Then she said one sentence. If what you said is true, what you're holding isn't rights protection materials. It's a bomb. She paused for a second. Take care of yourself. She hung up the phone. I sat in the milk tea shop for another half hour. A bomb? I'm a steel rebar worker who's carried cement for 10 years. He was actually clutching a bomb in his hand. The thing is, I need to find the actual document. Screenshots from the query system alone aren't enough. I need the document that got over 40 mu of land, added to the demolition scope out of nowhere. Who approved this? Who signed it? What procedures did it go through? Who pocketed the money? Where am I, a farmer, supposed to get all this stuff? I thought of that business card. Zhou Yafen, General Affairs Section of the Town Demolition Headquarters. Why would she help me? I have no idea. I don't have time to wonder why right now either. Because other than this path, I'm surrounded by walls on all sides. I dialed that number. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. The voice on the other end was very low, like they were hiding somewhere and speaking in a hushed voice. Are you Song Tieju? Yeah, I checked the stuff you asked me to look into. The area doesn't match. It's off by over 40 mu. She paused for 2 seconds and said, Got it. 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. 2nd floor reading room of the county library. Watch your back when you come. Don't let anyone tail you. She hung up. I stared at the call-ended screen. My heart was pounding really hard. What's waiting for me tomorrow? I have no idea. But I have to go. On my way back to the village from the county town, I sat by the window on the last row of the bus. When I was almost at the village entrance, I habitually glanced outside. He Dejun's gray van was parked at the entrance of the roadside grocery store. He was leaning against the front of the van, smoking. When the bus drove past, his eyes followed the window for a second. I don't know if he saw me, but I know one thing for sure. Every step I take. He-Man King is watching 1:40 p.m. the next day. I arrived at the county library. There weren't many people in the 2nd floor reading room. A few students were bowing their heads doing homework. An old man was reading a newspaper. A girl in the corner was wearing headphones, zoning out. I sat down by the window. I picked up a random magazine I could reach and flipped through it, pretending to read. But I couldn't read a single word. 2:05. A woman in a gray coat walked in her early 30s, hair tied back behind her head. She was carrying a canvas bag, no makeup on. Her lips were a bit dry. She sat down across from me. She glanced at me to confirm and said, Song Tieju. I said yes. She didn't make small talk. Directly pulled a brown paper envelope out of her canvas bag. After you finish reading the stuff inside, take photos of all the pages, then give them back to me. I can't give you the original document. This is a copy from the archives. They'll check if any page goes missing. I opened the envelope. There were 4 A4 sheets inside. The header said supplementary agreement. Party A was that developer company. Party B was New Jawan Village Villagers Committee. It was signed by He Man Kang with a red stamp next to his name. I didn't understand some parts of the content, but I got the key numbers. On top of the 87 mu approved in the original document, the actual expropriation scope was expanded to 132 mu. Party B is responsible for the newly added 45 mu. Completing land clearance and public outreach work. Party A will pay extra fees at the agreed price, paid separately. These 4 words made my scalp tingle. This money didn't go into the village's public account. I asked her where the money went. She said 2 words. Private account. He Man Kang's personal bank account. And one person from the town government, too. You don't need to know who that is. You just need to know this agreement exists, that's enough. I took photos of each of the 4 pages one by one. I took 3 shots of each page to make sure every word was clear. Then I gave the envelope back to her. I asked her why she was helping me. She looked at me with a calm expression. He Xiaolong smashed my family's stall 2 years ago. Her voice wasn't loud when she said this, but every word was steady. My dad has been selling breakfast for 15 years. Right at the entrance of the town primary school, He Xiaolong drove his pickup past that day. Somebody's bike fell over for no reason and scratched his car. He got out and kicked our stall to pieces. We called the police, yeah. You know what happened? We mediated and got 3,000 yuan in compensation. My little brother even signed the written understanding. Because He Man Kang called the police station, she stood up and picked up her canvas bag. That's all I can do for you. Don't call me again later. She walked to the entrance of the reading room. He paused and didn't turn back. Song Tieju. Watch out for He Dejun. He's been watching you these days. After he left, I sat in the library for another half hour. I went over those 4 pages of photos on my phone 3 times. My heart beat faster every time I looked through them. Then I left and took a bus back to the village. It was almost dark when I got to the village. The first thing I did after putting down my stuff was go to that crack in the wall, southeast corner of the ruins. I reached my hand in and felt nothing. I scraped my hand back and forth inside the crack several times. My nails scraped against the stone. It hurt like hell. There was nothing there. The USB drive was gone. It felt like a bucket of ice water was poured all over me. The testimony recordings from 6 households. 3 weeks of hard work. All the only original evidence I had was gone. I started rummaging through the ruins like crazy, moving bricks and lifting stone slabs. My hand got cut several times by broken bricks. My hand was covered in blood. Still nothing there. My phone rang while I was still rummaging. My mom's voice was shaking. Tieju, come home right now. Your dad is kneeling in the village committee yard. I dropped the brick in my hand and ran straight to the committee. I saw it from far away. My dad was kneeling right in the middle of the yard. An old table was set in front of him. Those 20 red banknotes, 2,000 won total, were neatly stacked on the table. He Man Kang was sitting across the table, with his legs crossed, holding a purple clay teapot, sipping it slowly. 7 or 8 villagers stood nearby watching the scene. Some had their arms crossed. Some were laughing. He Dajun was standing in the corner, cigarette in his mouth, looking totally unbothered. My dad's voice was hoarse, like it was squeezed out from the very bottom of his throat. Manchang, I'm begging you, don't make things hard for Tieju. I'm on my knees for you. I'm on my knees for the whole village, too. We're dropping the lawsuit, we're dropping it. Okay, I'll pay you back the 2,000 yuan, we'll leave. Leave Niu Jiawan. We'll never come back. He Man Kang put down the purple clay teapot. Come on, Brother Fu. I thought you were a reasonable guy. Would have been so much better if you did this earlier, but kneeling just for me isn't enough. You also need to apologize to the villagers. After all, your son delayed everyone's demolition compensation. The villagers are all upset about it. Right. When he said this, his tone was very soft. So soft, like he was just making small talk. I rushed over to help my dad up. Dad, get up. He wouldn't stand up. He shook my hand off hard. Tiju, leave me alone. Just stop, okay. We can't win against him. I've been fighting him for 20 years. We can't win. His knees were covered in dust and blood. There was a hole worn through his pants from kneeling. I had no idea how long he'd been kneeling there. I squatted down and looked at his face. It was covered in wrinkles. He looked so much older. More than 10 years older than he was half a year ago. I helped him stand up. Then I turned to look at He Man Kang. He was smiling. That winner's smile. That smug, superior look. That I told you so smile. I said one thing, very quietly. Himankang, you made my dad kneel to you. Fine, I'll remember that. Then I helped my dad and left. No arguing. No threats. No looking back. I could feel all those stares on my back. But I didn't turn around. Later, someone told me, after I left, Himankang's smile froze for a second. He stared at my back for a long time. Then he said to the person next to him, "This kid's eyes look wrong." He couldn't tell what was in my eyes, but it made him uneasy. The next few days, I laid low. I really did lay low. I left home before dawn every day. Went to the town construction site to carry cement, unload trucks, and stack bricks. 110 yuan a day, worked till dark. When I got home, I cooked for my mom. Watched my dad take his medicine. Then I crawled into the shed and laid down, didn't go out. Didn't talk to anyone. Didn't go to the fields. Didn't make any calls. Himankang sent Hidajun to watch me for 3 days. Hidajun reported back to him, "That guy just works, goes home every single day. He's as docile as a work animal, no trouble at all." Himankang breathed a sigh of relief. He started humming little tunes again when walking around the village. He smiles at everyone he meets. When he squats outside the small grocery store, he even says to people, "Told you so, right?" An ant can't topple an elephant. He thinks he's won, but he has no clue that while I'm moving cement every day, my brain is still running non-stop. First thing, the photo of the supplementary agreement is stored in my phone. Phones are way too fragile. It could get stolen. It could fall into water. It could get broken if dropped. I need to make backups. There's a print shop in town. It's right next to the post office. I spent 3 yuan to print 2 copies of the 4-page agreement photos. I folded 1 copy and stuffed it at the construction site, in the gap of the bedboard under my bunk. I put the other copy in a locker at the town's long-distance bus station. I put in 2 yuan in coins. I got a key and strung it on my waistband. Second thing, the recordings are gone. The USB drive was stolen, but the people involved are still here. All the info is still in my head. Old Man Lee has 4 rooms plus an open shed. His 350,000 yuan compensation was cut down to 160,000. Sister-in-law Zhao's old well compensation was crossed out entirely. Zheng Baozi's dilapidated housing subsidy was cut in half. The Wang family's 250,000 yuan compensation for 3 rooms was cut by 150,000. There are 2 more households whose names, house numbers, compensation amounts, and reasons for the deduction. I spent 2 nights writing all of this down on paper. I tried my best to make it organized, following the format that the legal aid young lady taught me. My handwriting is ugly. I even wrote several characters wrong, so I crossed them out and rewrote them, but all the numbers are correct. Third thing, and it's the most critical one, the way of sending letters last time didn't work out. The letter to the Municipal Commission for Discipline Inspection went unanswered. The one to the Provincial Bureau for Letters and Calls also got no response. That young lady told me on the phone that I should try submitting the materials in person at the petition window of the Provincial Discipline Inspection Commission. Submitting in person leaves a record. Someone will sign for it. It won't get suppressed easily. It takes 5 hours to get to the provincial capital by long-distance bus. I asked the foreman for 2 days off. The foreman glanced at me. "Tieju, is something wrong at your home?" I said there was something at home I needed to handle. He didn't ask any more questions. He deducted 2 days' wages from me. I brought the written materials with me, the printed copies of the agreement, and the screenshots of the photos saved in my phone. The bus left at 6 a.m. I sat on it for 5 hours. It stopped twice on the way. When I arrived at the provincial capital, it was almost noon. I stood at the bus station exit and was dumbfounded. I didn't even know where the Provincial Discipline Inspection Commission was. I asked a taxi driver and he said, "Number 1 Changsheng Road." A taxi ride costs over 40 yuan. I took the bus instead. I transferred twice. I walked for more than 1 stop after that. I finally arrived at the gate. It was a big building. There were security guards and security checks at the entrance. I was wearing an old jacket from the construction site. Cement spots were all over my pant legs, and the mud on the soles of my shoes wasn't even dry yet. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to submit petition materials." "Did you bring your ID card?" I said I did. He took it and looked it over, then looked up and sized me up. Then he let me in. The first floor lobby. The petition reception window. There were more people in line than I expected. The line stretched from the entrance to the corner of the corridor. I waited in line the whole day, from 11 a.m. to 4:20 p.m. I was hungry at noon but didn't dare leave the line. I stood there and ate a steamed bun I bought at the station that morning. Finally, it was my turn. A man in his 40s was sitting inside the window. He had a very serious face. He was a little bald on top. He took my materials. He flipped through them very quickly first. Then he flipped back and stopped at the pages of the supplementary agreement. His expression changed. He looked up at me. Wait a second. He took the materials and walked into the back room. When he came out about 2 or 3 minutes later, another person was following him. That person was older. He was wearing a white shirt. His hair was gray, and he was wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. He sat down in front of the window, read my materials from the first page all the way to the last. Then he started asking me questions. The questions were really detailed. That 45 mu discrepancy. How did you find out about it? I looked it up at the Land and Resources Bureau. Your house is within that 45 mu area. Did they show any official papers during the forced demolition? No, they came in the middle of the night. They didn't even give us a notice. Who provided you with this supplementary agreement? I thought for a moment. An insider who didn't want to reveal his identity. He glanced at me. He didn't press for more details. He read the materials for another 10 minutes or so. Finally, he took off his glasses. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. You can go back now. He said someone might come soon. To verify the situation you reported. Don't do anything unnecessary before that. And don't tell anyone you've been here, got it? I nodded. When I walked out of the building, it was already dark. The streetlights were on. The roads in the provincial capital are very wide. Rows of car headlights passed by. I stood on the steps zoning out for a while. Then I went to the bus station and bought a ticket for the last bus. I sat on the bench in the waiting room and fell asleep against the wall. I had a dream. I dreamed that our old house was still standing. My mom was drying quilts in the yard. My dad was sitting on the stone at the door smoking a dry tobacco pipe. Green jujubes hung on the jujube tree. The sun was warm and nice. When I woke up, the bus was just pulling into the station. Outside the window was the gray, hazy county town. I wiped the corner of my eye. I couldn't tell if it was sweat or something else. On the third day after I got back to the village, a black car with a Provincial A license plate, the Passat, parked in the town government compound. I only found out about this later. When I learned about it, Mankang still had no idea. He was still in the village committee office, crossing his legs and bragging to others. That kid surnamed Song is finally behaving. I told you, didn't I? On my turf. Even an ant can't make any trouble. The investigation team had been stationed at the town government for less than 2 hours. Before the whole New Jiawan village was in an uproar. No one knew who saw it first. It might be the old lady at the town government gate, who sells fruits. Or it might be some villager who went to the town for business. Anyway, by noon, a bunch of people were squatting in front of the village grocery store. They were all chattering and discussing the matter. Mankang got the news at 12:30 p.m. Dajun called him. Dad, something's wrong. Several people came to the town, driving cars from the provincial capital. Mankang was having lunch at that time. He was halfway through a bowl of noodles. He put down his chopsticks. He started making phone calls. First, he called the deputy town mayor. No one answered. He called a second time. Still no one answered. Third, he called a section chief in the county whom he had known for over 10 years. The phone was off. The fourth call rang twice and was answered. The person on the other end said, "We're in a meeting. Talk to you later." The line went dead. The fifth call was busy. The sixth call could not be connected. 6 phone calls. None of them got through. Mankang sat on the sofa. His phone was burning hot in his hand. His wife came out of the bedroom and asked what was wrong. He roared, "Get lost." At 2 p.m., 2 cars drove from the town into the village. The one in front was that black Passat, followed by a silver-gray Buick. 4 people got off the cars, 2 men and 2 women in casual clothes. You could tell at a glance they were not from the village. They didn't go to the village committee. They walked straight to the ruins of my house. They took photos and measurements. They measured over and over again with a tape measure. One of them held a professional device and scanned the ground for a long time. Another person held a document to cross-check with the location of the ruins and made marks on it. I heard all this from my mom. She said several people in casual clothes came and wandered around our ruins for more than an hour. They asked her when the house was demolished, if anyone had notified us in advance, if we had received any compensation documents. if anyone was present when the house was demolished. My mom is very honest. She answered whatever they asked. She started crying as she answered the questions. When those people left, one of the women looked back at my mom. Her expression was hard to describe. At 4 p.m. that afternoon, the investigation team notified He-Man Kang to come, cooperate with the town government to answer their questions. He-Man Kang put on the nicest white shirt in his closet, and even wore a tie. His wife said before he headed out, he stood in front of the mirror for 2 whole minutes before leaving. When he came back home, the entire back of that white shirt was soaked through. He didn't even bother to straighten his crooked bottle cap. He didn't say a single word, locked himself in the room and made calls for over 2 hours. His wife pressed her ear to the door and eavesdropped a bit. She couldn't understand most of the conversation, but she caught one sentence clearly. He-Man Kang said on the phone, "Old Chen, you can't just leave me hanging. You were also part of what happened back then." It seemed like the person on the other end said something. Then He-Man Kang's voice suddenly changed. He sounded super anxious. "What do you mean you can't handle it? If you can't handle it, who can?" He didn't eat any food or drink any tea that night. He smoked 2.5 packs of cigarettes. The next day, the investigation team started going door to door. They didn't just ask about what happened to my family. They asked every household how much compensation they got, what the signing process was like, whether they were pressured into signing, whether anyone made them sign any documents. Did you sign it voluntarily? It was the same set of questions. When I went around asking these questions a month ago, everyone shut their doors tight. But now, Old Man Lee cried. Sister Zhao told everyone about He Xiaolong pushing her husband. She got more and more agitated as she spoke. Her voice got louder and louder, and she was almost yelling by the end. They made the lame guy hand over a receipt. The compensation amount written on it was totally different from what he actually received. There was a full 120,000 yuan difference. He said when he signed it, He-Man Kang told him, those deductions were public share fees, cleaning fees, and farmland restoration funds. He didn't understand it back then, so he signed it. Household after household. It was like opening a valve. Water that had been blocked for who knows how long came gushing out. On the 3rd day, he dodged and defected. He went to the town on his own, found the investigation team and said one thing. I'm willing to cooperate, but you have to guarantee my safety. He told them a lot of things. I don't know the exact details of what he said, but after He-Man Kang found out about this, he smashed the 47-inch TV in his living room. His wife said that night he was pacing back and forth in the room for 3 hours like a trapped beast. On the 4th day, the developer acted faster than anyone else. The project manager flew to the provincial capital overnight and entrusted a lawyer to hand over the original supplementary agreement to the investigation team. He said one thing, our company was coerced by He-Man Kang. What a load of bull. But the investigation team got the original document. That's more important than anything else. A system that ran on fear for 20 years. Once someone pokes a hole in it from the outside, the people inside run faster than rabbits. No one wants to be the last one left behind. What He-Man Kang spent 20 years building, half of it collapsed in just 4 days, and I did absolutely nothing these 4 days. I went to carry cement as usual every day, came home to cook, and watched my dad take his medicine. But I could feel that the village had changed. Before, when I walked past the village entrance, everyone would walk around me to avoid me. Now people start greeting me on their own initiative. Tiezhu, have you eaten yet? Tiezhu, you're back. Some even came up to me and asked in a low voice, do you know some important people or something? I didn't say anything, just smiled. On the afternoon of the 5th day, He-Man Kang was officially notified to accept further investigation. When he walked out of the village committee office, the setting sun shone on his face. A crowd of people gathered at the entrance. I was just walking over from the village entrance, with a bag of cement on my shoulder, covered in dust all over. We made eye contact for 1 second, just 1 second. I had no expression on my face at all, carried the cement and walked right past him. He stood there rooted to the spot. The corner of his mouth twitched once. The shortfall my dad discovered back then. A large chunk of the land sale money was missing. Now there's a new chain of evidence. The deputy town mayor, surnamed Qian, is He-Man Kang's older cousin. He reacted the fastest. On the same afternoon, the investigation team talked to him. He started spreading rumors everywhere. He-Man Kang and I only have a normal working relationship. I know absolutely nothing about his personal problems. After He-Man Kang found out about this, he smashed a purple clay pot at home, the one he usually treasures like his own life. He said 20 years. I fed an ungrateful bastard for 20 years. But he didn't even have time to curse anymore, because something happened to He Xiaolong. On the 6th day after the investigation team entered the village, He Xiaolong was drinking in the county town. He drove that black pickup truck and crashed into a barbecue stall at the night market. The table fell over, chairs went flying everywhere. A customer got a glass cut on his arm. After He Xiaolong got out of the car, he didn't even apologize. He even pushed the vendor twice and yelled a bunch of insults. The patrol team just happened to pass by and took him away right there. Before, He Man Kang could fix this kind of thing with just one phone call. He dialed the number. It rang more than a dozen times. Someone picked up, listened to what he had to say, and went silent for 3 seconds. Lao He, you haven't even sorted out your own problems yet. How do you expect me to help you? As for your son's case this time, I'd advise you not to get involved, or you'll just make it worse. Click, the call hung up. He Xiaolong called his dad from the detention center crying, "Dad, come get me out of here. The food's bad and I can't sleep well here. People are bullying me." He Man Kang gripped his phone, his voice hoarse. "Shut the hell up. I can barely even take care of myself right now." But the worst blow didn't come from outside. It came from within. The whole village knew He Man Kang had a long-time mistress, Aunt Chen, the widow from the east end of the village. She was 8 years younger than He Man Kang, and they'd been together for 12 years. He Man Kang promised her a resettlement apartment. But a few days ago, Aunt Chen heard something. From other people, the 30-something Aunt Chen who ran a nail salon in town heard the news. While she was chopping pigweed, the kitchen knife left a nick on the cutting board. When the investigation team interviewed her for the 3rd time, she told them everything. Not only did she talk, she dragged out a notebook from under her bed, wrapped in 3 layers of old cloth. It was a handwritten account book. For 12 years, every month, it recorded how much money He Man Kang gave her, where it came from, and who handled it. She even taped a few bank transfer receipts inside, neatly attached with clear tape. When she handed the notebook to the investigation team, she said one thing. "He lied to me for 12 years. If he's going to be shameless, I'm not going to save his face either." The investigators opened the notebook. After flipping through a few pages, they looked at each other. Later, someone said, "This notebook alone involved over 1 million yuan. When the news reached He Man Kang, he sat on the sofa stunned for a long time, then muttered 3 words quietly. "That bitch." But there was nothing he could do anymore. Everyone who should run has run. Everyone who should snitch has snitched. Everything that should be handed over has been handed over. He'd been the local tyrant of this village for over 20 years. It wasn't because he was skilled. It wasn't because he was capable. He only relied on one thing. Everyone was afraid of him. Now no one's afraid anymore. So he's nothing. The vibe in the village changes every day. First, someone saw me on the road and nodded at me from far away. Then sister-in-law Zhao carried a bag of sweet potatoes and left it outside the shed. She didn't come in, just left it there and went away. Then came old Mrs. Wang. She carried a bowl of egg noodles and set it at the shed door. The noodles were still steaming. She stood there for a few seconds wanting to come in, but didn't. Set down the bowl and left. She walked 2 steps, then came back, opened her mouth, but didn't say anything and left again. My mom saw that bowl of noodles and wanted to bring it inside. "Tieju, look. Aunt Wang sent us noodles." I glanced at the bowl of noodles and didn't move. "Mom, leave it there. I'm not hungry." My mom looked at me and didn't say anything. I understood. The hands that threw bricks back then are the same hands that carried this bowl of noodles. It's not that I'm not hungry. I just can't swallow it. The day He Man Kang was taken away was a Tuesday. It was just after 6 a.m. The sky had just brightened. The fog hadn't lifted yet. The whole village was gray and hazy. 2 cars parked at his front gate. 4 men got out and went into the yard. They came out 5 minutes later, with He Man Kang in between them. He was wearing pajamas, dark blue ones. There was some brand logo printed on the chest. You couldn't see it clearly. He didn't even change his slippers into the padded ones, stepping on the wet, muddy ground, slipping every 2 steps. His wife chased him out of the house, yelling as she ran. "You can't arrest him. He's the village chief. He's done so much for this village. Do you even know that he's the village chief?" No one looked back. The car door opened. He Man Kang ducked his head and got in. The moment he lowered his head, I heard from others later that He had no expression on his face at all. It wasn't calm, it was total blankness, like he suddenly forgot who he was. The car door shut. The car drove out of the village. The whole village stood on both sides of the road watching. Some were secretly filming with their phones. Some were muttering under their breath. Most of them had blank faces. When the car passed the ruins of my house, the place he bulldozed in the middle of the night half a year ago, Hamankang turned his head slightly behind the car window and glanced in that direction. I wasn't there. I was moving cement in the town. My mom told me about it later. She said she saw the car drive past. Hamankang was behind the window, his hair all messy, his clothes all wrinkled too. I asked her a question. What expression did he have? My mom thought for a second. No particular expression. He just looked old. Aged so much all of a sudden. I didn't ask anything else. After Hamankang was taken away, things moved a lot faster, since it involved illegal land expropriation and forced demolition. My family's case wasn't handled under standard demolition compensation rules. It was under the state compensation standard. Forced demolition compensation. Mental distress compensation. Resettlement transition allowance. Plus property losses caused by the illegal land expropriation. We calculated each item one by one. The day the written decision came out, I got a call when I was in the town, asking me to go to the county office to sign papers. In the office, a middle-aged woman slid the documents across the desk to me. She explained each clause to me one by one. She glanced at me after she finished speaking. You can ask if you have any questions. I had no questions. All my questions were already answered half a year ago, just not in the way I expected. I walked out after signing the papers. I stood on the steps of the county government compound. The sun was super bright. I squinted up at the sky for a while. The amount on the paper was something I'd never even dared to dream of before. I didn't tell anyone about it. The night I got the written decision, inside the makeshift shed, I handed the decision to my dad. He fished his reading glasses out from under his pillow. One of the arms was broken, wrapped up with tape. He held the paper up to his phone's flashlight, reading every single word carefully. He read really slowly. He spent about 5 or 6 minutes reading it. After he finished, he handed the decision back to me. He didn't say a single word. He turned around, his shoulders shaking up and down. I knew he was crying. It wasn't out of joy. It was the resentment he'd bottled up for over 20 years, finally, having somewhere to go at last. My mom can't read very well. She asked what it said on the paper. I told her the gist of it. She froze for a long time, then asked me, Tiju, can we build our house again? I said yes, and she nodded. Then she went to tidy up the clothes piled in the corner of the shed. She moved really, really slowly, like she was scared she'd startle the good news away if she moved too fast. I stood outside the shed and smoked a cigarette. Honestly, I thought I'd feel super relieved when this day came. But when it actually came, I found I wasn't as happy as I thought I'd be. My dad's lungs still haven't fully recovered. He gasps for air if he walks too fast. He has to rest twice just to walk up a small slope. Half of my mom's hair has turned white. She didn't have this much white hair half a year ago. I'm 28 years old, but I look like I'm 38 when I look in the mirror. But no matter what was supposed to come finally came. But what happened next? I never saw coming. No one knew how the news got out. Maybe someone from the county office mentioned it, or someone from the town coordination team let it slip. Early the next morning, there was noise outside the shed. I lifted the door curtain and saw 5 or 6 people standing there. Their expressions were so familiar to me, fawning, awkward, evasive. When I came to them with the recording back then, they had exactly the same expressions. But back then, they were trying to push me out. Now they're all fighting to squeeze in. Tieju, there's something we want to discuss with you. I knew exactly what they were going to say. I pulled down the door curtain, but I knew more and more people would show up. Over a dozen people came the next day. More than 20 showed up on the 3rd day. Here's how it went. After Hamankang fell from power, all the original demolition compensation plans were scrapped. Higher up sent a new coordination team to recalculate everything. But the villagers found a huge problem. The documents Hamankang made them sign back then were all kinds of messy, useless paperwork. Voluntary price cut agreements, supplementary contracts, and all sorts of discount confirmation forms under different names. All the clauses in them were straight-up traps for the villagers. They wanted to overturn all these documents and fight for reasonable compensation again. But who would lead this effort? The new coordination team was sent by higher-ups. No one in the village knew them. And who does the investigation team trust? Out of more than 130 households in the whole village, the only person who ever stepped up, took responsibility, and was proven by facts to tell the truth is me. That's why they all came. Let me make this clear. They didn't come to apologize. They came to use me. The first group that came was a few elders, the kind that aren't normally bad people. Back when the whole village was attacking me, they just shut their doors, stayed quiet, weren't accomplices. But they didn't lift a finger to help either. They spoke very cautiously, with smiles plastered on their faces. That awkward, obviously ingratiating kind of smile. Tieju, do you think you can help us with this? Talk to the coordination team on behalf of all of us. Your words carry weight now. After I listened to them finish, I stayed silent for a really long time, long enough that they started glancing at each other awkwardly. Go talk to the coordination team yourselves. I can't handle the whole village's affairs. They left looking awkward and embarrassed. The people that came after were different. They brought gifts with them. Eggs, peanuts, a slab of cured pork, 2 bottles of rapeseed oil, all the best stuff the villagers could afford to give. I recognized a few of their faces. This one threw manure on my place before. That one screamed insults at my mom. That one held up the sign in front of my shack that said, "Black sheep in big red characters." Now they're standing right in front of me, holding eggs, peanuts, cured pork, with smiles on their faces. Tieju, everything that happened before was He-Man Kang's fault. We were forced to do it too. I stood at the door of my shack staring at them. That bucket of manure they splashed on my house back then feels way lighter than these eggs in my eyes. The smiles on their faces froze instantly. Take this stuff back. I can't eat any of it. No one said a word. They carried their things away silently. The last person in line turned around for a second. His lips moved like he wanted to say something, but he didn't speak in the end. But the most shocking thing happened on the afternoon of the 3rd day. A woman dragging a 4 or 5-year-old kid showed up in front of my shack. It was Zhao Kui, Xiaolong's wife. Xiaolong got a heavy sentence. Drunk driving plus intentional assault, plus a bunch of dirty deals they dug up later. He's gonna be in prison for years. Zhao Kui is raising the kid alone now. She's got no one to back her up in the village at all. Her father-in-law got arrested. Her husband got sentenced. Her mother-in-law ran away. She was the one who insulted my mom the worst back then. I remember it perfectly clearly. That day, my mom came out of the shack to collect laundry. Zhao Kui was walking by just then. She stood there and glanced at my mom, then said something. "You deserve your miserable life. Poor trash deserve to live in shacks." She was the one who said that, right to my mom's face. My mom didn't say a word. She went back inside the shack and sat there the whole afternoon. Now Zhao Kui is kneeling at the door of my shack, holding the kid, crying so hard her face is covered in snot and tears. "Brother Tieju, something happened to my Xiaolong. I'm begging you, please. No one is taking care of me and my kid anymore. Please put in a good word for me with the higher-ups, I'm begging you." She kowtowed as she spoke, her forehead hitting the ground with loud thuds. The little kid stood next to her watching his mom kneel on the ground, his eyes wide open, having no idea what was going on. I stood at the door of the shack, staring down at Zhao Cui. Zhao Cui looked up at me. "Half a year ago, you said my mom deserved to live in a shack. Do you remember that?" Her face went pale instantly. "When my mom knelt in front of your father-in-law, begging for a way to survive. You stood right beside us. You smiled, remember?" He started shaking, trembling all over. "Now you're kneeling at my door." I paused for a second.
"Do you know how that feels now?"
I didn't say anything else. Turned around and went into the shack. The door curtain fell shut behind me. Zhao Kui knelt outside crying for over half an hour. Her cries got softer and softer, until they turned into quiet sobs. That kid stood there the whole time, clutching his mom's sleeve with one hand. Later, Zhao Kui stood up, took the kid's hand and left. When they left, the kid glanced back at my shack. That look he gave. Forget it. After that, several groups of people came. Some came to sincerely apologize. Some were just going through the motions. Others came to feel me out. I barely paid any attention to them. It's not that I hold a grudge. It's just those memories are still way too vivid. I can still smell the manure water the second I close my eyes. When my mom was surrounded by people yelling at her, hunching her shoulders too scared to make a sound. I'll never forget that for as long as I live. Everyone was gone. It was almost dark. I sat in the shack and didn't move. My mom suddenly stood up, rummaged out a plastic bag from the corner and walked outside. I asked, Mom, where are you going? She didn't answer. She came back 20 minutes later. The plastic bag was empty. I asked, where did you go? She stood at the shack door, the setting sun shining on her. Half her hair had turned white. She said, I gave the bag of rice we saved to Zhao Kui. I asked what, but she wouldn't look at me. She stared at the ground, rubbing a mud stain on her apron. That little kid is still so young. The grown-ups' problems have nothing to do with him. I stared at my mom for a really long time. Finally, I just said one word, The day the new house compensation hit our account, the first thing I did was take my dad to the provincial capital to see a doctor. I booked a specialist appointment at the respiratory department. We waited in line for ages. The doctor looked at the scans and said there were several small nodules in his lungs. Plus, he already had chronic bronchitis. There's no way to cure it completely. But if he takes good care of himself and takes his meds on time, it won't get worse. After hearing that, the first thing my dad said in the consulting room was, Doc, how much did this appointment cost? The doctor said $300. My dad's mouth twitched a little. I said, Dad, don't worry about it. We have money now. He didn't say anything else after that. When we left the hospital, my dad walked ahead of me. Really slowly, he gets out of breath if he walks too fast now. He looked around at the streets of the provincial capital, just like a kid coming to the city for the first time. I asked him what he was looking at. He said these roads are so smooth. When we got back to the village, we hired a construction team for our original homestead. To start building our house, I helped with the work, too. I've been tying rebar for 10 years. Building my own house is no big deal for me. I don't want to talk too much about the building process, but there are a few details I remember really well. My mom cooked for the workers every day. Big pot meals for 10 people. Steamed buns, sometimes a whole pot of stuffed buns. She hummed while kneading dough. Little tunes no one else recognized. Probably folk songs she heard when she was young. She hadn't hummed in years. My dad carried a small stool to sit next to the construction site every day. He couldn't work anymore, so he just watched. He'd chime in every now and then. That wall's crooked. Did you see that? Lay the cement thicker. What's the point of skimping on that? The workers laughed at him. Old sir, you really know your stuff. He laughed too. I hadn't seen that smile in ages. The day we finished laying the foundation, I did one thing. Took that 2,000 yuan out of my pocket. The 2,000 yuan He-Man Kang threw at me back then. 20 red banknotes. I'd carried it with me the whole time. 6 months, the edges were all worn out from being touched so much. I counted them one by one. Then wrapped them up in plastic wrap. Put them into a tin cookie box, the same one I dug out of the ruins back then. I put the box right in the center of the foundation, poured concrete over it to seal it in. No one will ever see it again. I didn't tell anyone about it. What happened to He-Man Kang after that? It's pretty simple, actually. Illegal land expropriation, corruption, bribery, forced demolition, plus that old case of collective land from 20 years ago. Every single charge was counted clearly. He received a combined sentence for multiple crimes. He Xiaolong also got a pretty heavy sentence. He-Man Kang's wife moved away later, to her parents' home, and never came back. That fancy, small, Western-style house of theirs, the nicest in the whole village, is now locked up tight. The grass in the yard is already waist-high. The village's demolition work has restarted under the new coordination team's leadership. The compensation plan is posted in black and white on the village committee's notice board. The calculation of each household's area and compensation amount. Calculation methods and deduction items are all made public. Some people got way more compensation than before. Some got roughly the same amount. But at least no one's getting most of their money stolen anymore. A few villagers came to see me, saying they wanted to thank me. I said, what for? That money was yours to begin with. They stood around for a bit, then left. The new house took a little over 2 months to build. It was a bright, sunny day when it was finished. It's a 2-story house with red bricks and white walls. Not huge, but big enough for us. There's a jujube tree in the yard. When the bulldozer was demolishing the old house, I don't know if they went easy on it on purpose, or it was just out of the bulldozer's way. Either way, it survived. Now it's enclosed in the new yard. It's got lots of jujubes on it now. The green ones aren't ripe yet. On moving day, my mom cooked a huge feast. Spicy chicken, braised pork, cucumber salad, pork rib soup. Just the 3 of us eating. My dad said he wanted to have a couple shots of liquor. My mom said he couldn't because his health is bad. He said just today, just a small amount. I poured him a glass. His hand was shaking when he picked up the glass. But he downed the whole thing in one go. Then he picked up a piece of braised pork and chewed it for ages. After dinner, I helped my mom wash the dishes. He suddenly spoke up in the kitchen. Tieju, this kitchen is bigger than the old one. I hummed in agreement. Then he said the cooking stove is higher too. No need to bend over anymore. I hummed again. He kept washing dishes with his head down, quiet for ages. Then he said a third thing, Tieju, I miss your grandma. I froze for a second. He said if your grandma was still alive, and saw this new house. He didn't finish the sentence. I said, Mom, stop washing, I'll take the bowl from his hand. He walked out of the kitchen. I heard a sound from the yard. It wasn't crying, it was a sigh. A long, deep sigh, like he was letting out all the stress he'd held in for half a year. Early the next morning, I was getting ready to go out. I'd taken a new job, tying rebar at a construction site in the neighboring town. When I got to the gate, I saw something in the mailbox. A letter in a white envelope. It was addressed to Song Tieju. No sender's name on it. No postmark either. Someone must have slipped it in directly. I opened it. There was a piece of blank paper inside, with only 4 words written on it. Your dad didn't live in vain. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but I'd seen this handwriting somewhere before. I stood at the gate staring at it for ages. Then I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. The same pocket I used to carry that 2,000 yuan in, but the 2,000 yuan isn't there anymore. It's under the foundation of this new house, at the very deepest part. No one can see it, but I know exactly where it is. I got on my electric scooter ready to leave. My mom yelled from the yard, Tieju, are you coming home for lunch? I turned around to answer, as my scooter rounded the village entrance and vanished at the road's turn. Back in the yard, a bird was chirping on the jujube tree. My mom wiped the dust off her hands and mumbled to herself, we finally got through all the hard times.